What's your this, I quit story? My first job. I was assigned to a specific area, and I thought I was doing my job well. One Monday, I was pulled into the office and asked why whatever thing it was, I don't remember, hasn't been done for the last 2 weeks. I replied I wasn't aware it was part of my duties. My supervisor said he was putting me on a mandatory non-paid vacation for 2 weeks. No warning, no explanation on why I all of a sudden had to do work for a different department. So I said don't worry about it. I quit. It was a lousy job anyway. I was only getting paid 18 hours a week but was doing more than that. 16 and stupid, I guess. My father's story. He was a 22-year-old millwright and he had been working for the company for 4 years. He asked for a raise because one was given to a coworker who had the same job. He was told that his coworker has kids and a family to provide for, and that's why he was given a raise. And since my dad had no children at that time, he didn't need one. My dad applied for a job that paid almost twice as much with great benefits. He gave in his notice and the manager said, "Will you stay if we give you the raise you wanted?" He declined and worked for the second company for 35 years and retired last December. Got a summer job while I was in high school at a place that made fiberglass tanks. I was told I'd be doing groundskeeping and yard work. Figured I'd scored an easy gig of bombing around on a ride on mower and whatnot. Nope. The first day I show up, in a t-shirt and jeans. I was told the yard equipment wasn't ready, so they had me cut raw fiberglass for 8 hours with an X-Acto knife and no PPE. Being a dumb shit kid, I didn't immediately quit and did this for 3 more days. At least after the first day I'd brought my own gloves and long sleeve shirt. However, on said fated day 3 was when they were doing tank coatings. So about 10 feet away from me are 2 dudes in full PPE. We're talking coveralls, rubber gloves, glasses, face shields, and respirators. 10 feet away from me, in a poorly ventilated room, spraying the exterior of a tank with presumably fiberglass coating. I only made it a few hours before having to go to the bathroom to puke. Was told to quit being a pussy and go back out on the floor, so I fortunately had a moment of not being a stupid kid and said I quit and walked home. Both parents were mad when I told them I'd quit. Jokes on them though, because a few years later that company killed 2 dudes. A guy asphyxiated while working inside one of the tanks, and the person that tried to rescue him also ended up dying. Whole place got shut down permanently. Was getting screamed at in a meeting by some marketing jerk that was literally demanding my technical group perform magic on a completely unrealistic time schedule with almost no resources. Literally screaming at me in front of about 8 of my peers. Calling me incompetent. Just do your job. All of that. I stood up, said I refused to be talked to like that, and left the meeting. Normally if you just get up and leave these types of meetings, you're fired. Boss scheduled a meeting with me later in the afternoon after hearing about it. Figured I'd be walked out. Was told they fired the marketing guy. That was my F it, I quit moment. But the company kept me on and fired the other guy. Pretty happy. It's been a solid place to work ever since. Worked at a Spencer's Gifts for a bit during uni. I was working and saw that I was scheduled for an evening shift the day before a morning exam. So I asked the manager if I could switch. She said no, the schedule is already made up. Went back and forth trying to negotiate with her. She ended with, "You're going to have to decide what's more important, the shift or your exam." I was fractured my orbital socket in an industrial accident. Another employee lost focus at the wrong time, was supposed to wait for a hand signal and didn't. We had been working over 90 days straight of 13 to 14 hour shifts and living in crappy motel of 45 minutes drive from our work site. We were supposed to be on a rotation where we didn't work more than 3 weeks at a time. It was a close call and could have been a lot worse. I'm glad I saw it coming and had time to at least try and get out of the way. I got sent away after a night in the while the rest of that crew continued to work. After spending 2 or 3 days at home, the boss called to say that he needed me in Alaska in 2 days and that my flight was already booked. Told him I quit right on the spot. My mom's. I was studying overseas and my parents booked a trip to come out at the end of the school term, bringing along my 2 siblings, one who lived away from home, the other about to start college. It was a month-long trip, with lots of prepaid flights, trains, hotels, plus it would likely be the last big trip we all took together, obviously. Both my parents requested and secured approved PTO months in advance. It was the month of June, typical summer vacation. A couple days before the trip was to happen, my mom's boss hands her an assignment. Mom hands it back, saying she can't take it on as she has a month-long vacation about to start. My folks don't believe in hyperbole, but trip of a lifetime would be a fair description. Boss says, "Oh yeah, sorry, you can't take vacation anymore." Mom says, "If you cancel my PTO, I quit." Boss. Blank stare. Mom handed in her notice and left. We had an amazing trip. She got a new job on return. I worked for a group home. We had a difficult group of residents, but the company thing so much worse. Every resident was 14 to 22 years old. They had moderate mental development delays, 65 to 75 IQ range. They all had a psychiatric disorder from severe ADHD to schizophrenia, and they had also all been convicted of a violent sexual crime. I worked third shift. My normal hours were 10:30 p.m. to 9 a.m., 4 days a week. About 6 months into working there, they did a massive layoff. They went down to bare minimum staff to student ratio each shift, with nobody extra to call in if needed. That meant if someone called out, a person on the previous shift was forced. It got to the point where I was being forced 3 out of 4 shifts per week, and not just a few hours. I was working 10:30 p.m. to around 4:30 p.m. the next day, and still having to come in for my following shift. I had an hour commute each way, so I'd get home at 5:30 p.m. from a 16-hour shift, and have to leave the house again 4 hours later. Managed that for about a month. Then one morning I was told last minute I was being forced. Told them I was done and walked out. That month took a huge toll on my mental health. Swear it took me like a year to recover. A little Greek restaurant I worked at early in high school. Got hired, and spent the first 2 days cleaning everything the owner and son were too lazy to clean. Years worth of old grease in the deep fryer's interior, mold in the fridges, stains in the bathrooms, etc. Just gross. Ask about payday on the end of the second day and it went something like this. "So, how does payday work here? Is it weekly, bi-weekly? What? You are on training. If we like the job you do we will hire you with pay." Confused. I ask, "So you're saying that you're not going to pay me for cleaning years worth of mold, grease, and bathroom stains?" "No, you will be paid for work once your training is done." "Oh, okay. This. I quit." That's just illegal. You could have talked to the labor board. My first job was at a fast food restaurant. I only lasted about 3 months. The manager was sleazy. The employees were straight up lazy. I had to mop up one day. There was an area in the kitchen where you kinda have to lean forward so you can slide the mop under a counter. The manager decided to come out of the office and just stand behind me and watch. I looked at him and asked, "Is there something wrong?" He said no, but just wanted to make sure I cleaned correctly. Right. Because there was no worry about how well I cleaned the rest of the kitchen. But now that I'm bending over there is. I immediately stopped and walked out. Joined a call center with the obvious shady pay structure. They said the calls are inbound, so I thought, hey, that's not too bad then. Turns out the inbound calls were generated by their robocall system, indirectly implying that they were Google but never saying so, and we were directed to use some dubious answer if someone asked, "Are you Google?" After getting yelled at and cussed out and constantly getting people who had been called many times before and were clearly irate, I just got up and left in the middle of the day. I also complained to Google that these guys were pretending to be Google, and these guys were shit scared of getting complaints like that. Seriously up people. I was a truck driver working a regional route that required me working nights. So basically I would drive all through the night, deliver a load, sleep through the day, and take a load back to my original place the next night. The thing is, sleeping during the day at a warehouse where yard dogs, the guys that move trailers around the lot of the warehouse with little tractor deals, were constantly moving shit around, knocking into my truck, and oftentimes literally waking me up to move my truck. I was barely getting any sleep, and the only time I had to ever get a good night's rest was during the weekend. So driving to my first delivery, I told my manager I'm taking an extra day off because I'm exhausted and I have to get a few days of sleep. I was literally getting maybe 3 to 4 hours of solid sleep a day and energy drinks were worthless at this point. They gave me the go-ahead. I dropped my delivery, slept as best as I could at the warehouse and picked up the load to take back with a message from my managers telling me to have a good weekend and rest up. When I was about an hour and a half away from my destination, after driving all night for about 8 hours reaching pure exhaustion, I get a message saying never mind, we need you to work this weekend. Mind you, I know this stuff happens and you sometimes have to pick up the slack of other employees at times. Things happen. I get it, and 99% of the time I'm all for helping out other employees and my managers if they need it. But this was about the third time this happened. I haven't had a good night's sleep in 3 weeks at this point, and I kept trying to call my managers or anyone who would answer me. But it was the weekend and no one would respond to their messages or phone calls. I was literally being ignored and I just snapped. Luckily, the demand for truckers is massive. I mean, I get texts non-stop asking if I'm in the market because a company needs drivers. I haven't even been in the industry for 2 years currently, and my phone still gets blown up with calls and texts asking if I want to drive again. So literally all I did was call one of the numbers that would contact me constantly and immediately was hired after 5 minutes of talking on the phone. Sent in a message saying I quit and good luck. Funny enough, then they started responding to my messages and tried calling me. I know it was probably a dick move to them over, and I normally would never do that. But I just broke and could not take it anymore.